Just click record and we're off.
Fantastic. Smooth, very smooth. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second UniCycle webinar that's being hosted by the EAUC. My name's Charlotte Bonner. For those of you that don't know me, I work in the NUS sustainability team, leading on some of our green impact work, as well as our off-campus work, our internationalism work, and most importantly for today, our UniCycle work. So I've been working with Jack Windle from Love to Ride. Good waving, Jack. Less good unmuting before you spoke, but hey ho, we will recover from that later in the webinar. So
I'm unmuted. Apologies for that, Charlotte. There we go. Hello, everyone.
So we're going to be leading the session over the next hour to talk you through some of the pilot outcomes from the first year of the programme, building on the content of the first webinar. So for those of you that didn't dial into that, we gave a really in detail summary of what we've done over the past year. So what methodologies we've used to bring together a cohort of 8 universities and their students' unions working together to get more staff and students on bicycles. And the plan for today's webinar is to really build on that initial context by going a lot deeper into what we've learned. So one of the great things about a pilot is obviously you can look at what works well, but also you can adapt your methodologies based on what people have struggled with. So we're going to give you a nuts and bolts account of some of the things that have gone less well this year that people have struggled with, and what we're going to do to really amend the programme for year 2 based on that learning. So in terms of questions, Sophie said we have time at the end for Q&A. We absolutely do. But if people have comments or questions or experiences that they'd like to share with us throughout the webinar, then do feel free to use the hands up functionality, as well as the chat box. And we're more than happy to have some of those conversations throughout the webinar. We're also joined today by Lucy Kimberley from the University of Brighton, who's been one of our participants this year, and she's going to share a little bit with us some of her experiences as well. So hopefully it will be quite discussive, but you never know, it might be me talking for 40 minutes, but hopefully we'll have a more conversational webinar than perhaps last time. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Jack, who's going to talk us through a little bit of the context of UniCycle. We're just going to do a quick refresher before we get going.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully I'm unmuted now, and thanks for joining us. So I'll give you a very short potted history, really, of Love to Ride and then of how the UniCycle programme came about. Love to Ride started 10 years ago as an active travel behaviour change agency. We were actually called Challenge for Change, and we used to do multimodal active travel promotion in the same vein that people like Sustrans still do. We've since specialised in cycling and rebranded accordingly. We get much better results through focusing on a single behaviour. We've engaged just over 1/3 people in, I think, 12 countries we're at now. So we're increasingly a global outfit. In the UK, our workplace cycle challenges have engaged a lot of universities. We've had 80 universities, I think, take part in our programmes over the last 6 years before this project came about, including places like the University of York, who took place over a few years and had 1,000 of their staff take part in our programmes. So through that work, which is the sort of stock in trade really, is the Workplace Cycle Challenge, which is a fun competition between workplaces with encouragement at its core to get more people on bicycles. So we knew that we had a model that worked really well. We also knew that if we're going to help the DFC to reach their target of doubling cycling trips by 2025, we need help to reach new audiences and preferably younger ones. So we, in cahoots with NUS Sustainability and the EAUC, we put in a bid last year to the Innovation Challenge Fund for the UniCycle project. There was then a process of kind of identifying institutions that wanted to take part and making sure we had a good mix of institutions, different campus versus city-based, north-south, different topography, that sort of thing. We had interest from 28 universities, and that was whittled down to 6 who took part on a subsidised basis in the pilot this year, and 2 extra universities joined on a fully funded basis. I think that's pretty much the background to our side of it.
Absolutely, and we wouldn't be doing our jobs properly unless we actually gave the participants a bit of kudos at this stage as well, because obviously taking part in a pilot is always a risk. The whole nature of a pilot is that there will be things that work, you know, there's a strong rationale behind the project design, but we are trialing, we're testing, we're looking to see what methodologies work best. So we're very, very grateful for the time and the commitment and the patience and the inspiration that we've got from the participant universities. So I always dread this bit in case I miss somebody out. We should say really big thank you to the University of Brighton, to the University of the West of England, the University of Exeter, the University of Worcester, the University of Sheffield, the University of Leicester, the University of Oxford, and the University of Kingston, and their respective students' unions for their participation this last year. So how it worked is once we'd identified the participating institutions, we went through a planning stage with each of them to look at who the partners were, what the incentives and the motivations were for them to take part in the pilot. Were they targeting a particular audience? Were there particularly challenging behaviours that they already knew about? And we brought everyone together in November to go through in detail the ISM behaviour change tool, which is at the heart of the UniCycle programme. It was developed by researcher Andrew Garnton, and is a really good way of assessing existing behaviours, but also planning interventions to help create behavioural change. So we brought everyone together. That was a really inspiring day, both in terms of helping us with our methodologies, but also in terms of sharing intervention and ideas between institutions. As well as that, we've been able to help off the back of that ISM planning day, we've been able to help institutions design their own interventions that are specific to their own particular challenges. And we've supported that local level activity with some national events, such as Cycle September, which we slightly reframed to Cycle October to make more aligned to the academic year. Winter Wheelers, which is an initiative to really recognise the cyclists that cycle all year round, so recognising December cycling. And then the UniCycle Challenge, which is really the figurehead national of cycle, which took part in March, despite the dreadful weather that we had, to incentivise staff and student groups to take part in either cycling themselves or encouraging other people to cycle in return for kudos and prizes. So we've done some national level work and some local level work, and we're just at the stage now. We submitted the first draft of the final report to the Department for Transport last week. We're publishing case studies to celebrate what people have achieved and showcase their work. And we're doing lots of dissemination work, such as this webinar, to share good practice, but also build on that pilot year for the long-term legacy of the pilot, which is next year and beyond. I talked a little bit about the ISM model. This is it in a nutshell. It's a head inside a circle inside a box, which in itself doesn't necessarily mean much, but when you look at the labels within each of those, it's a way of identifying the different things that shape our behaviours as individuals. So you have your own individual beliefs, your attitudes, your own emotions, your own skill set, your own habits that form part of your behaviours. So for example, when it comes to cycling, it might be that emotionally I am scared of cycling. I'm scared of traffic. It might be that my attitudes towards cycling is that cyclists are a nuisance on the road. Alternatively, my values could be very much aligned to cycling, in that this is something that I feel gives me freedom and independence. I have the confidence to do that. I have agency. So you can see how your individual attributes impact upon your behaviours, and within that, more broadly, then the social impact on your behaviours. So do my friends cycle? Is it a requirement of my course that I have to drive? Do I think that cycling is cool or not? Are there opinion leaders? Are there role models for me to see cycling as a normal and regular habit? And then beyond that is the infrastructure, so the material. Am I physically able to cycle with the material environment that I live within? So for example, do I have a space for a bike in my house? Do my course times align with the bus routes easily? Are there rules that say actually I need to drive to be able to get to my placement, for example? So it's a good way of looking at existing behaviours, but also when you're designing interventions, you can use this model to say, okay, have we thought about how this intervention will impact on individual attributes, on social attributes, on the material attributes of our environment to help create long-lasting and impactful behaviour change. So we've used this model a lot. It will continue to be at the heart of the UniCycle programme from now on. The feedback that we've got from people has been very strong. And if you want to know more about the ISM model, then that's something that we can definitely talk about later on. In terms of the interventions that people have planned, they've been really wide-reaching. So here are just a couple of examples that we went into more detail with in the first webinar. So from right, we'll start on the right-hand side. That's the Vice-Chancellor at the University of Worcester on the launch of their e-bike loan scheme day. So they went into partnership with the local authority and GTEC, who are a local e-bike manufacturer, to establish 50 e-bikes for hire by staff and students, and in the long term, the local community. We've then got a University of Oxford doctor bike session. So this is where a local bicycle mechanic comes to provide free services to staff and students. You can see there the snow on the table and in the background. So this was during the March UniCycle challenge, when I think the first beast from the east hit. But the feedback from students was that they really needed doctor bikes in central locations. They'd been provided historically at a college level, but never centrally. So they really thought about the locations of where these doctor bike sessions were to make them more accessible. Skipping to the left-hand side, with the bakery there and the bicycles, this was the University of the West of England's student union's Bristol Bites tour. So this was a food festival on 2 wheels as a way to show people really safe, quiet, user-friendly cycle routes from the campus, the main French campus, to different locations across the city, motivating people with a food festival. So I think they planned originally 16 different stops for people to get freebies and tasters of different local specialties from businesses aligned to the Students' Union. In reality, I don't think they actually got to 16. I think they were quite ambitious about how many they could get to in one day, but there's more information about that case study on our website. And then finally, last but not least, second from the left, we have a lovely picture there
Oh, Charlotte, I think we may have lost sound.
of Lucy and Fred.
Can you just double check your microphone?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, hear you loud and clear. Charlotte, at the moment, it's just a series of beeps.
Yeah, she's playing some sort of keyboard there.
Yeah.
I'll pick up on the photograph. So the photograph is of Lucy down at Brighton. Hi, Lucy, you're on the call, aren't you? And Fred, who's actually Love to Ride's local project manager down in Brighton. And they ran a series of bike breakfasts at every single one of all 5 campuses, I believe, wasn't it, Lucy? That were very well attended, and they were a great intervention for UniCycle. One of the recurring themes that I'm sure we'll return to is how food is often a very good way to get people on bicycles. Charlotte, are you back with us?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. You just went a little bit techno there on us.
Oh, always. Everybody loves a bit of techno on a Wednesday morning. Lucy, do you want to tell us a little bit about the work that you've done at Brighton? Great time to find out
yes,
a little
of
bit
course.
more about what you've done.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Lucy Kimberley. I'm the Environmental Officer at the University of Brighton. So we have actually participated in Love to Ride for a number of years now through our local council, Brighton and Hove City Council. And then when the UniCycle pilot came about this year, we were quite keen to participate and kind of build on what we'd already done with our students. So we put ourselves forward the pilot, and we're really pleased that we got it and that we've used it this year. We did have a few teething problems at the beginning of this calendar year because our team, the environment team size was reduced, so we didn't have as many staff working on it as when we originally signed up and when we started, but hopefully we still managed to participate, and we still made a big change. So yeah, the picture is of Fred and myself. We stood outside our key campus areas where cyclists come in. You can see the bike rack in the background with our vouchers for bike breakfasts, and approached people cycling in. For the bike breakfast, we worked with our Accommodation and Hospitality Services Department to produce paper vouchers that then could be used at our catering outlets and redeemed for a hot drink and a breakfast roll. I think this was one of the key things for it that made it so much easier than providing like a breakfast spread, because some people didn't use their voucher, so that was fine. It means it didn't get, no food was wasted, but it also meant it was just easy for us to set up. And as Jack said, we did it at all of our campuses, so that made it a lot easier to do from campus to campus because we didn't have to get food each time. At our Eastbourne and Hastings campuses, which are a bit further away, and unfortunately I didn't have enough staff to get everyone there, we asked them to show creative proof at their hospitality outlet of their cycle in, which could be anything from a photograph to coming in hot and sweaty after their cycle, or maybe not if they're a cyclist who's already been for shower, whatever. They had to show something to get their breakfast voucher, and that still was popular. We have done that before as well, so it wasn't a completely new thing. So our hospitality services were keen on that, and we also tied it in with our Dr. Bikes, so we were able to use some funding from, had a bit of joint funding from Love to Ride, which the council run, and the UniCycle pilot to do our Dr. Bikes. So that worked really well, and it meant that we were able to offer Dr. Bikes across all of our campuses again. So everything tied in really nicely, and it's important for us with so many campuses that we try and replicate what we've done, so every student and member of staff has access to the same facilities. So it has worked well. We're hoping to participate next year, just looking at funding and all the different projects that we'll be participating in. And it's interesting what you're saying, Charlotte, is what specific things do we want to get out of it. I think it would be important for us this year to really focus on what we want to get out of UniCycle and what we want our staff and students to do. We're having huge changes with travel around our campuses this year. We're having a huge development, £200 million development, which is going to mean a significant reduction in car parking, which is good. But we're hoping that that will drive some behaviour change and get people looking at different modes of travel. So this could be really useful and tie in really nicely with that. So lots of exciting things to come this year, hopefully.
Perfect, thank you so much. I don't know whether anybody's got any questions for Lucy, or whether you want to save them up. Sophie, obviously you've got control of the chat. I don't know if there's anything there that you want to say before we continue.
There's nothing pinged in just yet. So again, yeah, just a quick reminder, we do have the chat box should anybody wish to write a little note or if they have any questions. But if not, I will hand back.
Great, thanks Sophie. So just to do a quick summary of what we've achieved this year before we get into the nuts and bolts. So we saw really great figures from the UniCycle challenge, which despite the weather saw people really engaging with that actually. We saw 25% of the people using the Love to Ride UniCycle platform being completely new riders, which means they haven't ridden the last year. And collectively they clocked up over 1 million miles, which I just think is phenomenal in terms of the amount of cyclists we have on our university campuses. And we really saw the links between operational kind of sustainability and estate staff, as well as the health and wellbeing staff within institutions, researchers and student stakeholders engaged with the programme at different levels. And of course, we trialled lots of different events and approaches. In terms of the kind of feedback we were getting, you could see here that 72% of people who were new riders when they first signed up to the platform reported riding at least once a month afterwards. So people actually getting on their bikes and starting to use them more. And people seem to really enjoy it. You know, the feedback is people want to take part in this again. They see the incentives as being really valuable to them. And here's some qualitative stories to add to that. So people really seeing that they get the capacity to cycle from the communications, so helping people overcome their fear, getting more regular information so that they know where to go to sign up to particular initiatives that you probably already have on your campus, such as a Cycle to Work scheme, and giving people that motivation, that little shove in the morning to say, do you know what, today I'm going to go onto campus on my bike rather than in the car, and giving people that extra motivation to do so. And what's really fabulous, the last comment there is from the University of Oxford, who, Oxford has a reputation as being a hub of staff and cyclists, but they particularly wanted to reach staff. They found it really valuable for building that community and reaching that audience of people that they haven't engaged with before. So we're really pleased that we've got some strong foundations on which to build. But it hasn't all been bells and whistles. There's been some things that we've learned over the year that will help us shape both how we deliver the programme in year 2 and beyond, but also how we support the institutions that are taking part. And the absolute first lesson that we've learned is about starting early. So it's one of the downsides, I should say, of external grant funding, is that you're always bound by other people's timescales. And with the Department for Transport's Innovation Challenge Fund, we're so grateful for that opportunity in terms of it helping us establish this pilot. But it did mean that by the time we'd gone through that process, identified the participants, got going with project planning, for many of the institutions it was already into the autumn term. And NUS knows from our work that habit formation really is something that happens early rather than later. So for example, if you've got new students coming to a campus, however they start travelling around that city, so to and from campus from their halls of residence or their private accommodation, to and from town from campus, however they start, that's how they're likely to continue. When you've got a moment of change, the habits you form at that moment of change last, and it's much more difficult to retrospectively change them. Another thing that some of our participants told us was that students are sold bus passes either at open days, so before they even arrive at campus, or during welcome weeks. So if a student's just bought a £400 bus pass for the year, it's very difficult to try and get them to not use that bus. There's a financial incentive for them to continue to use public transport. So starting early, both in terms of the planning but also the intervention delivery, is really important for getting everything set up so we can really maximise the opportunities that the academic calendar provides us. Jack, is there anything else you want to add with that one?
Just to echo that point, really, one of the really interesting things at the ISM day was to hear the expertise that people were able to share. A lot of the participating unis have a very long record of promoting cycling, and they had some really good basic advice about this sort of thing. And you're absolutely right, on an open day, in fact, before the open day, in welcome information, framing cycling as the best, cheapest, healthiest mode of transport to and around your campuses is the single most important thing to do, to kind of hail students with the idea of cycling at the very, very outset, is kind of unbeatable as an intervention, and we'll be working with institutions to try and make sure they do that next year for sure.
Absolutely. It's about normalising habits, isn't it? So if you're a new student, or a new staff member for that matter, coming to a campus and you see cycling as a normalised behaviour, so it's in your welcome information, there's the infrastructure near your place of work or study and your residences to have a bike, it makes you appear, it very much frames cycling as the norm. And we all know we're social animals, so that's really very important. The other thing that we've learned is that there are a lot of people who are interested in seeing cycling enhanced on campus. Some of these are internal figures, so it could be that you have estates transport colleagues, sustainability colleagues, welfare and well-being colleagues, sports and active lifestyle and health and well-being colleagues, internal to your institution and or your students' union, all who will have an incentive for seeing that cycling is increased on your campus. But it's not just within kind of the ivory tower. Community partnerships are also really valuable as well. We've already referenced local authorities, and Lucy's talked about how your local authority has helped fund some of your cycling promotion work. Similarly at Worcester, the community partnerships that they've had with the local authority and GTEC have been really crucial to seeing interventions get from idea to delivery stage. So there's lots of people here who can be your allies. It's one area that there very much is lots of interest. And On top of that, there's the policy framework. Jack's already mentioned the government targets. So there really is a driving force for lots of people to be interested in this. So it's not an area of sustainability where you feel like you're tackling it single-handedly. There's lots of people out there that will very much be interested in seeing this succeed. So again, starting early, trying to find these people, reaching out to them, bringing them in at the design phase, so that you're maximising the impact of that diversity in terms of interest, so that you're mutually supporting one another, and so that you've got some extra pairs of hands in delivery is really valuable. So building a community and doing some stakeholder analysis for your campus early on is really key. And the other thing with this is that we found that actually your community changes. So as the programme gets momentum, you'll identify new stakeholders that will want to be a part of your UniCycle program. It might be that students have won a prize in one of the competitions and realise that they want to play more of an active role. It might be that local community organisations find out about your work and get in touch. We've had lots of researchers contact us to say, I'm studying behaviour change and transport habits at my institution that's running UniCycle. Can you put me in touch with the right people? So your community changes, but doing some stakeholder analysis early on to find out who are the key people, who are the strong student voices, who are the strong staff voices, who are the strong community voices that we need to bring into the delivery of this, so that it can be well resourced, so that we benefit from the diversity of their interests and their expertise, so that we can make the programme a success. The downside of having a really broad, diverse community of people with an interest in the success of UniCycle is that sometimes it means that there's no one person or particular team leading on it. And this is a trap that we've fallen into, particularly at one of our pilot institutions this year, where there was lots of people in the room. You know, we had tables full of people saying, yes, this is something that I want to see succeed in our university campus. But when it came to actually delivering and designing some of those interventions and delivering them, there was no one personal team that was saying, do you know, I'm coordinating this. It doesn't necessarily have to deliver all of it, but they have to coordinate it in terms of defining those roles and responsibilities, getting agreement from the group, and making sure things happen. So ensuring that with your diverse community, there's ownership and leadership of the different elements of the programme is absolutely critical if you want to see success. And it's one of those things that just needs good thinking through at the beginning and good resourcing. So being realistic about the fact that this does take time. It takes staff time. It takes time to pull different opinions together. It takes time to work with me and Jack. So making sure that people have that capacity and that there's somebody there to say, yeah, I'm taking oversight for this is absolutely critical. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that, Jack?
No, I'd just echo what you said in terms of ownership. So to go back to the last slide, actually, about building community, I think one of the things that's been really interesting this year is the strong relationships that already exist between universities and cycling co-ops and community interest companies. And there's definitely one of the kind of longer term ambitions for the project is to help form a really good sort of virtuous circle with those sorts of organisations. Obviously, if we have a co-op or a community interest company that's delivering cycle maintenance, as they often are, they can also deliver bike maintenance training, adult cycle training. In the process, they can recruit students who will be volunteers and contributors to their work, and we're skilling up students to then pass that training and those skills on to their peers. So that's something that I think there's a lot of potential for in the project. I was delighted also that Oxford decided to donate their prize rather than taking the cycling kit that they were offered. They donated their prize to the Broken Spoke Co-op in Oxford. So that was completely exemplifying the kind of strong relationship building that we want to do with those organisations. Also, where local authorities are concerned, if you're interested in taking part in UniCycle next year, do drop us a line, because we have very good relationships with lots of local authorities through our Workplaces work. And in some places, they've been able to match fund or help out in other ways with universities joining the UniCycle programme. But yeah, to go back to the ownership, that's absolutely key. It needn't be a huge time commitment. There's some guidance in the NUS rate card listing for UniCycle about how much time it might involve. But the important thing is just to have some sort of clearly identified roles so that there is some ownership of the project. we can work with you to get those roles in place and establish the necessary lines of communication, but a little bit of work at the outset to help build that project team and make sure that it is owned will make it run really smoothly.
Absolutely. So the next thing that we've learned is about providing incentives, and this is both at a national level through the whole UniCycle programme, but also at a local level too. So Jack, do you want to tell us a little bit about how the incentive structure works from the Love to Ride platform perspective?
Absolutely, yeah. So encouragement is completely central to what we do. Last year for Cycle September, it's likely to be similar, although we're looking at a few alternatives. But last year, the way that the encouragement incentive worked was that any person who rode for the first time in over a year received a fair trade screen printed organic t-shirt, which ticked lots of NUS Sustainability's other boxes, which was great, in the post, as did the person who encouraged them. So incentivizing that kind of peer-to-peer encouragement is really key to how we do our incentives. But we also obviously go for kind of really eye-catching prizes. We've had all sorts of holidays, city breaks, and as you can see from the slide, mango bikes, which we had for Bike Week, which actually proved to be our most popular prize in terms of the attention it got through the website. I'm actually talking to Mango later today about hopefully securing some of their bikes specifically for the UniCycle program. They're a really nice fit because they're very good looking bikes. They're also pretty affordable. So I'm going to try and secure some prizes, but also discounts for students and staff who are registered on the program. Also, I mean, as Lucy's already shown, really kind of low-level edible incentives are absolutely key to what we do. We find that in our workplace programs as well. So much so that, in fact, we developed earlier this year a boxed bike breakfast that people can order from a partner of ours called Vitalife, because we know that in workplaces, the one thing that will definitely get people cycling in is if they know they're going to get fed some breakfast at the end of it. So those sorts of low-level, more immediate incentives are really important too. We'll come to the different packages that we've got available, but the supported package will have an incentive, encourager incentive built into it as well. Is there anything else that I should say about incentives, Charlotte? Have I forgotten things from last year?
I don't think so. No, actually, I think that's all good. There
is one thing that I should say, you referred to this earlier, is that winning prizes really does recruit you good advocates of the programme. We had a lad called Will Proud at Sheffield who won a local bike shop voucher in October in the initial prizes draw. He went on to submit a micro-grant fund. He set up a bike workshop in a new part of the engineering department there called the iForge. So incentives are a very good way also of recruiting energetic and enthusiastic allies for the project.
Yeah, excellent. And on that note, we've done some work with some of our institutions, not all of them, to really empower students to be at the heart of the programme. And this is both in terms of the delivery of the programme. So in some institutions, we have students who were recruited to lead on communicating UniCycle to the campus audience, interventions, and bringing together various stakeholders. So really at the heart of delivery. In some cases, the students have been a key audience. So using this Sheffield example, how can we get students involved in really inspiring other students to get on their bikes? Because as we know, peer-to-peer communication incentives are really important. So looking at how we upskill students to really play a key role in the delivery of the programme is something that we've done in different ways across the institutions that have worked with us. But for year 2, we're very much looking at how do we train students up, so once they're involved, they've got the skill set necessarily to really make the most of that opportunity. How do we continue to provide micro grants so that when they have fantastic ideas, we can resource those and keep them motivated? And also working with delivery teams so that if students are going to be at the heart of the delivery of the programme, how can we make sure they're recruited in a timely fashion, and how can we best support them to make sure that they're doing a fantastic job? Because always with students, it's a there's 2 prongs to it, in terms of the students can bring excellent capacity and dynamic and creativity to your work, But also from a delivery side, you need to support those students to develop. They're not there simply as kind of extra pairs of hands. And it's really important that we're making sure that students are benefiting from advancements in their skill sets, in their understanding of what's necessary to create the sustainable and just future that we're aiming for. So looking at different ways of empowering students across our participants is something that we've done this last year, and as a result we've put into the plans for year 2 different ways to help institutions A, bring students into the core delivery of the programme, but B, train those students up so that they're really maximising their potential in the role. The other thing that we're thinking about doing for year 2, we haven't quite finalised plans for this, is looking at how we better involve student clubs in the UniCycle programme. So a lot of universities already have cycling clubs, kind of sporting clubs, racing clubs, mountain biking clubs. How do we involve them in the UniCycle programme better? Jack, you've got some thoughts on this.
I certainly do, yeah. It was, again, because we didn't get the early starts that we now know is crucial. Recruiting clubs to the project happened late in the day, basically. But we did have some really, really enthusiastic uptake from clubs later on. Some of them, I was surprised actually to see that some of them do have behaviour change as part of their remit. Utility cycling is kind of written into what they do, which is fantastic. Clubs more generally, as in outside of the university sector, have been quite hard for Love to Ride to recruit because they don't immediately see the value to them, even though longer term, obviously, they stand to gain by getting more people on bikes. So because of that, we've been looking at coming up with a kind of clubs competitive format, which I'm very keen to trial through the UniCycle platform next year. Through the links that I've made with a few cycling clubs on the UniCycle pilot, I know that there's appetite out there for it. And we will be looking to do something that's much more kind of sports cycling focused, specifically to recruit those clubs to the programme, who then have often bicycles, certainly active and well-organised memberships, and they can run really, really good events. The cycling club at Sheffield has run a couple of fantastic events in the spring semester to get people signed up. So very keen. Again, this comes under the category of starting early, really. Any universities that sign up, would be a really good idea to get in touch with clubs really early on, put them in touch with me so that I can talk to them about how best to set up our club's competition, but also so that we can be talking to them from the outset really about boosting their membership and getting them involved and getting them to help us run some really impactful and engaging events on campuses.
Absolutely, it's an oversight on my part when we had that this slide here. We should have had sports clubs, student sports clubs there.
You've got sports in there in the background. Look.
Yeah, I'll amend it for next time. So the final lesson that we've really learned is about communication channels. And part of this comes down to, again, that community and the fact that in most cases we've been working with one person at each institution who's been coordinating the local UniCycle activity. But we now know that really we should be better supporting that one person or that lead contact team to really have a diverse community of allies around cycling promotion, working with them on UniCycle, so that we can really maximise our use of all communication channels. So this is a word cloud that summarises the feedback we've had from participants in the programme who have registered to the Love to Ride platform but didn't participate in one of the challenges, so didn't ride whilst the programme was active. And you can see that some of these are more easy to negate than others. Time is often what is cited when we talk to people about lack of engagement, and obviously it's very difficult for us to create time for people. When I figured that one out, I will let you all know. But some of them are much, much easier. So the fact that people forgot, the fact that people didn't remember, the people that is something that we can easily, I think, overcome by better utilising our communication channels. So it shouldn't matter whether people tweet or don't tweet. They utilise the staff information pages or they don't. They read their university emails or they don't. They use Snapchat, they don't. We should be utilising all available communication channels, both from the lead contact at each institution, but their network, to make sure that UniCycle is really embedded in the various communication channels across the institution. And where possible, we've already done this to some extent in the first year by, for example, integrating UniCycle within the Green Impact Programme where that exists, utilising student switch-off communication channels to celebrate and signpost people to the UniCycle programme. But we need to definitely do some much better analysis of communication channels early on in the day when we're doing our stakeholder analysis to say, okay, what are the different communication channels we can use, and what can we, Jack and I and the UniCycle team, provide each institution involved in the programme to make this as easy as possible. So we provided some social media packs this year, but they were very much from one perspective. Can we provide those for different audiences with different motivations behind involvement in the programme, for example. So really thinking about what communication channels are available and how we can maximise their use is something that I think is really, really important. So there's a summary of the key learnings that we have from the first year of the programme and what we're planning to do off the back of those learnings. As we go into year 2, it's always difficult when you go from a grant-funded programme to a non-grant funded programme in terms of legacy, but we're really comfortable and confident that what we're offering is going to be both impactful and accessible to people. So the institutions, the 8 institutions that took part this year, all match funded their Department for Transport Innovation Challenge Fund funding, and we've been able to keep the basic membership of the programme for year 2 and beyond to within £400 of that initial fee. So we're quite pleased with that in terms of hoping that it will be accessible to people. So we've designed a model that is based on 2 tiers, one for basic membership and one for fully supported membership, and that recognises that some people just do not have the capacity internally to really lead on this and will need a lot more support from Jack and I. So we've developed this, A, to make it fair so that people are paying for what they're actually going to access, but also to provide that extra support as and when it's needed. So the first tier of membership is very much looking at the Love to Ride platform, which is bespoke to your institution and includes you in the into UniCycle competitions, the marketing assets for those competitions, the national prizes part, and monthly reports on the data from the app that are relevant to your campus. So from the platform perspective, that's what's included on the basic membership. And alongside that, there's bucket loads of remote support and community building between participants to make sure that you have what you need to make the project a success on your campus. So whether that's around project planning, communications planning, stakeholder engagement, monitoring and evaluation, we will provide that ongoing support, but also you'll have access to kind of the hive mind of participants in the programs through webinars and support calls and JISC mail, so a mailing list between participants so that everybody's not working in isolation. We're not learning ourselves, we're learning from each other to help catalyse that change. And we'll also be including you in central monitoring and evaluation reporting. You'll be invited to the ISM workshop and webinars, a central part of the programme, and we'll also probably throw in a celebration event at the end of the year to really review project learning and feed into year 3. So that's what the programme looks like. And like I say, we've kept it as darn close to the original fee for year 1 as we can, recognising that we don't have that external funding this year. And then if you want extra support in terms of incentives, in terms of printed marketing assets, in terms of face-to-face support on campus from Jack or myself or one of our colleagues, then the fully supported package is to really give you extra capacity to deliver against the programme's objectives. So as well as everything included in the basic membership, you'll get a lot of extra capacity in terms of me and Jack being on site to facilitate project planning meetings, to go through that ISM modelling with you, to engage your stakeholders and train staff and student leads and volunteers for the programme, and providing on-campus support for interventions as well. So a much more in-depth level of support if that's what you need. So at the moment, if you're interested in taking part, this is all publicly available on NUS's UniCycle website. The URL's coming up, and Jack and I are here to help work with you if you want to take part, to look at how you can fund this and how you can best sign up so we can get people started as early as possible, because as we say, that was lesson number 1. does anybody have any questions, any comments, anything that they want to discuss with us? I can see that there's a few things in the chat bar. Is there a deadline to sign up to participate? There isn't a deadline, but the sooner we start, the better. So we recognise that everybody has different resourcing restrictions, shall we say, and we can work with those to get some timescales that suit you. But there isn't an official deadline now. But I think from our experience that getting signed up about now, so we can get started about now, is absolutely preferable. But there isn't a specific deadline yet. If it gets to the point where take up is getting to the point where we think we will be at capacity in terms of the number of institutions we'll support, we'll make that information publicly available both on the existing UniCycle web participant channels, but also through the EAUC as well. Michael, let's have a look. Has anybody offered training on bike maintenance and cycle training to students and staff? If so, what kind of uptake did you take and what really helps uptake? Jack, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really good question, Michael. Thank you for that. We have, and it's another of these things that has kind of fallen in quite late. At Sheffield, we've worked with a not-for-profit called UniCycle, who do a lot of cycle training in the city, including, oh, thanks, Lucy, there we go, including doing cycle training. Maintenance training. One of the things that I think is really helping uptake is that we've encouraged, it was Will Proud, who I mentioned earlier, who was an early winner on the programme, who has instigated this. We're doing small group training for all of the people who are involved in the iForge workshop that he's helped to set up. So I think getting students together in small groups to access that sort of training is really, really key. Lucy, you've got some experience of doing this as well.
Hello, sorry. I had to minimise the chat screen to find the mute button. Yeah, so actually we haven't done this as part of UniCycle this year, but we have done it previously. So the council are offering free both cycle confidence and bike maintenance training, and we set up a number of sessions on our campuses. The way that we did it is that staff and students, it was open to both, had to email and book on, and there were 6 places I think on each one, and that was quite a simple process. They just had to email us to book on. So that side of things was very easy because the council were already running the sessions, and they organised all of that for us. What unfortunately didn't work so well is lots of people didn't turn up. Staff were very, very good at turning up. That was fine. Unfortunately, it was students who I had about 4 sessions where literally nobody turned up and they were fully booked. So if you did want to do something like that, I would try and think of some way of trying to incentivise them to come. We, even though the session was free, we trialled giving them a voucher so it felt like they had which had a value on it, so a 25 quid voucher. It didn't mean anything, but when they had the voucher, we hoped that might mean that they thought that they had something that was of value. I hope that makes sense, to make them come along. Unfortunately, that didn't work either. And then the other thing we trialled as well was leaving a deposit. So they had to, when they sign up, leave a £5 deposit, which they would get back when they turned up to the session. Unfortunately, that didn't work either, and actually no one signed up to the session when we did that. So I'm not sure what is the best way, but that's what didn't work for us. But if you could tie it in with some kind of incentive to make sure people came to them. I think obviously making sure that they're at a good time. We did them at 5 o'clock in the evening, which was really good for staff. We thought it would be okay for students, but I didn't really get any feedback on what was good time for students. And in somewhere that was accessible, did make the mistake of nearly holding it in a room on the 2nd floor, which obviously for cycle training wasn't that helpful, but we realised beforehand. So just identifying the best space to hold some trainings. Obviously, if you're going to do confidence training that's out on campus, that's also something different. But if you're doing maintenance training, somewhere that's accessible by bike, and that the facility staff know that people are coming in with bikes and covering the flooring if needed, and all those kind of things also need to be considered. So I'm sorry that was a little bit negative, but if anyone has any positives, I would also be willing to know, and because I would really like to be able to do the sessions again and get more students to come along.
That's really useful. Thank you, Lucy. The one example of very, very effective encouragement incentives to get students to take up adult cycle training was the University of Nottingham. And this is a couple of years ago, but they were basically giving students 10 quid cash for coming along and doing adult cycle training, which worked very well, as you can imagine. Another thing that we're trialing in Sheffield with regard to the adult cycle training rather than the bike maintenance training, although that's a small component of it, is to basically make it much more of a sociable thing. So we're recruiting, we've done this through workplaces, and workplaces are actually funding it themselves. And I'm looking at ways to do this with students in a similar way, is to make it a social thing at a coffee shop. So you meet up in the morning, you have a coffee together, you do the level 1 cycle training, you come back, eat lunch actually on the business's model, and then you do the level 2 in the afternoon, and there's some basic bike maintenance kind of integrated into that. But I think a format with students in groups of 4 to 6, where we can easily get a voucher for a coffee at most universities, where they get something out of it and they can do it with their mates, I think is crucial. More broadly, in terms of adult cycle training, this is the reason that we've developed this in Sheffield and trialled it up there, is that most local authorities offer adult cycle training for free, but people just don't take it up. And yet the biggest barrier that people cite is fear and lacking confidence to ride on the road. So really cracking the nut in terms of incentivizing people to take up that training is really, really crucial. I'm sure we've all met people who've done adult cycle training. I've had a couple of sessions myself. It gets amazing feedback. No one ever regrets doing it. And so it's a big part of the project to improve that uptake, and we'll be working with universities to do it next year.
I can just add a little tiny bit on that, and it might be for following it offline, but obviously a lot of NUS's sustainability work involves recruiting students, either as volunteers or as members of staff, or as people that are coming to partake in research or placements to enhance their learning. So we've got a decade's worth of experience now in how to ensure that sign-up levels are good, and how to frame experiences so that they're of interest to the student community, and how to retain sign-ups once you've gone from registration through to actual delivery. So I can share some of those with you, Lucy, offline after the webinar, to see whether we can up your numbers in the future. Valentine from Cycling Scotland, you've got a few further comments on training too. I think we're interested. Do you want to...
Yeah, it's actually from a prior job experience. I used to be a cycling officer at a university as well, a University of Scotland, and part of my role was to deliver cycle training as well. So I organised cycle training sessions, and when it came to maintenance session, I did come across the same issues as mentioned here, that people would sign up and then never show up, and it was very similar for things such as let drive or essential cycling skills, confidence training, that kind of thing. What I did find though worked quite well was to try and set up the training within the framework of a larger event. So, for example, a health day at a campus, or a sustainability fair, or any large event at a campus in a busy venue, and offer the training on the go. So offer a session, say have a poster in your stall saying, oh, we're running 30 minutes training sessions all day long, and then you can get 1 or 2 people sign up when they're free on that day, and this is something that worked actually quite well. So over the whole day, for 3 or 4 hours, you actually end up training 4, 5 or 6 people, because you can very much catch them on the day, and if they say that they're interested and available, it's more difficult for them to say no. And I noticed that this is something that worked very well as well for getting people to try e-bikes, and trying to have the bikes lined up in the busiest place on campus, and saying, oh, do you fancy going for an e-bike ride, 30 minutes, and then as soon as you get 2 or 3 people, you take them on a bike ride.
That's great. Thank you very much, Valentin. I think that immediacy is really key. And actually, Michael's just asked about cycling packs for new students, and you can see there's a very kind of natural link up there that you could say to people, look, if you've got the time now during whatever welcome week event it is or whatever, to do some basic cycle training, you can take away these tangible, useful things to help you continue to cycle. So I think that's a really, really useful insight, Valentin. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. What I would say about giving freebies is, if possible, try and not give anything without getting anything in return. So don't let students take any freebies without then giving you some of their time to try and explain what you're trying to do, because it's especially something that can happen at fresher, and because these things are actually quite hard to source and fund. It's something that also can help get uptake of the people who are actually interested in taking part in your initiatives. So, yeah.
The other thing that came out from the session that we ran at the EAUC conference 2 weeks ago was a fantastic intervention from University College Dublin, I think it was, and their students' union had gone around the key hotspots of student cycle storage, and they'd left paper tags on bikes that didn't have lights or obvious light fittings on them to say, if you want some free lights for your bike to improve the safety of your riding, come along to the Students' Union and find out more about our cycling provision. We'll give you a set of lights. So making sure that the freebies that you're giving to students are really targeted for the people that are going to need them and use them, but also using that that provision, as Valentin says, as a way of engaging with people in the first place about the work that you do. So this is the kind of fantastic example of kind of hive mind sharing of good practice, knowledge transfer that we're really bringing to the heart of the UniCycle program. So thank you so much, everyone, for your expertise and your input. Does anybody have any questions that are burning? Because I'm aware that we're 2 minutes off finish time, and I want to finish on time so that you can all get to your lunch and or other important.
Valentin has one.
Go for it.
I do have one, just very quickly. So I'm just trying to gauge what kind of support you will offer universities and colleges who wish to take part in sourcing funding, because I can foresee that funding is going to be quite a big issue for a lot of them. So I mean, I understand that there's the cost involved, and I can imagine that for a vast number of institutions, sourcing the funding will be challenging. So what support will you be offering to these institutions to try and source funding externally?
From Love to Ride's perspective, we're obviously always happy to use the connections we have with local authorities. As I've said, quite a lot of the local authorities that we've worked with over the years know the value of what we do, and they're happy. Obviously, universities can be some of the biggest burdens on their local transport infrastructure, etc. So we're more than happy to do that. Also, in Scotland, obviously, there are various pots of money around which we'd be keen to work with potential project partners on accessing those funds. My understanding is that a lot of them are limited to being not-for-profit organisations, so they would have to be bids led by students' unions or student associations. So very interested to explore those possibilities and do whatever we can to help. I don't know if NUS Sustainability, Charlotte, have secret stashes of cash down the back of the sofa that they're willing to share out.
Life would be a lot easier in the case. But what we do offer, and this is not just for UniCycle, but this is for all of our programs and the work that we do, is support for institutions on building internal business cases, on helping framing, on convening different partners to come together to identify sources of income. Because when you compare, for example, the price of the membership packages that are outlined there with the tax and national insurance savings that you can make from increased sign up to the Cycle to Work scheme, for example, we're talking really small bits of money. I know that it may seem like big pots, but for a university's budget, this is
oh no, I agree.
Bringing people together to build that business case and helping with framing is definitely what NUS can offer. Unfortunately, we can't offer to lead on funding bids just because it becomes too burdensome in terms of the logistics, but we can definitely bring our convening power and our research and our framing experience to help people build those business cases internally. Fabulous. So unless anybody has anything else that is absolutely burning, I'm going to wrap up the session today by thanking you all for participating. Thank you for your questions and your comments. thanking especially Lucy for her overview of what's been going on at Brighton this year. It's really great to have that honest perspective of what has worked well and what has still to be improved. If you want to find out more, Jack and I are available here. The EAUC are doing a fantastic job at helping us communicate the findings of the first year's pilot. You can find out more at nus.org.uk/UniCycle, and we look forward to hearing from you and to finding out where we go with this in year 2. So thank you very much everyone for your time.
Thanks very much, folks. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Charlotte and Jack and Lucy. I'm now going to end the meeting, and the recording of this webinar will be available shortly. But any questions in the meantime, please drop me a line. Thank you very much. Bye.
Cheers.